You watch what you eat. You try to make healthy choices. You take your medications. And yet, your blood sugar still seems harder to control than it should be. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. And here is what might surprise you. The answer may not be hiding in your breakfast, or your lunch, or even your dinner. It may be hiding in a single 10-minute window that most people with type 2 diabetes never think about. A window that happens every single evening, right after you finish eating. Stay with me, because what we're going to cover today is simple, it's free, and it's something almost anyone can start tonight. Let's start with the question that a lot of people ask, but very few get a satisfying answer to. Why is my blood sugar still unstable even when I'm doing everything right? You're watching your carbs. You're avoiding sugar. You're taking your medication on schedule. You're trying, and still the numbers don't cooperate the way you expect them to. Here's something that most people in this situation have never been told. Blood sugar control isn't only about what you eat. It's also about what happens in the hours after you eat. And for millions of people with type 2 diabetes, that window, the few hours between dinner and bedtime, is where a silent pattern has been forming for years without them ever realizing it. Not because they're making dramatic mistakes, not because they're ignoring their health, but because nobody ever pointed them toward that specific window of time and said, "This matters." What you do here, even for just 10 minutes, can influence your glucose levels through the entire night. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. When people think about managing blood sugar, they almost always think about food, what to eat, what to avoid, how many carbs, how much sugar, what time to eat dinner, and those things do matter, absolutely, but there is an entire category of habits that most people never consider, and it has nothing to do with food at all. It has to do with movement, or more specifically, the almost complete absence of movement that happens for most people right after dinner. Think about a typical evening for most people with type 2 diabetes. Dinner finishes. They sit down on the couch. Maybe they turn on the television. Maybe they scroll through their phone. And they stay in that position mostly still inactive for the next 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours before going to bed. Now here is the thing. None of that seems wrong. It feels like rest. It feels like a normal evening, but what's happening inside the body during those hours of stillness is anything but restful from a blood sugar perspective. Because right after a meal is exactly when your blood sugar is rising, and movement, even very gentle movement, is one of the most effective natural tools your body has to bring that rise under control. When you sit still instead, that glucose has nowhere to go, and the opportunity to manage it naturally passes. Night after night, week after week, year after year. That's how a simple, invisible habit can quietly shape your blood sugar results in ways that feel impossible to explain. Let's take a moment to understand what's actually going on inside your body between dinner and breakfast. Because most people imagine that sleep is a quiet, passive period. Your body rests. Your metabolism slows. Everything just waits until morning. That's not what happens. Your body is remarkably active during the night, and several processes are running continuously, all of which have a direct impact on your blood sugar. The first is glucose release from the liver. Your liver has a job to do overnight. It supplies glucose to your brain and your organs to keep everything functioning while you sleep. This is completely normal. But in people with type 2 diabetes, that liver release can be higher than it should be, contributing to elevated blood sugar levels even in the complete absence of food. The second is hormonal activity. In the early morning hours, roughly between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m., hormones like cortisol and growth hormone naturally begin to rise. They're preparing your body to wake up. But as a side effect, they also signal the liver to release more glucose and reduce the body's sensitivity to insulin. This combination can push blood sugar up before you've eaten a single thing. Doctors call this the dawn phenomenon, and it affects a very large number of people with type 2 diabetes. The third is the carryover effect of what happened before sleep. How your blood sugar behaved in the hours after dinner, whether it spiked sharply or rose gradually, affects the baseline your body is working from when these overnight processes kick in. And that carryover effect is exactly where that 10-minute evening habit makes its impact. Now let's talk about the habit itself. And I want to be upfront with you. This is not a secret formula. It's not a supplement. It's not a complicated protocol. It is a short walk after dinner. That's it. 10 minutes. Light pace. Nothing intense. Nothing that requires special equipment or a gym membership or any particular level of fitness. Just gentle movement in the first 20 to 30 minutes after your evening meal. Now, I understand. That might sound almost too simple to make a real difference. And that's actually one of the reasons most people never try it consistently. Because it doesn't feel significant enough to matter. But here's what the research shows. When your muscles are moving, they absorb glucose directly from the bloodstream, and they do this independently of insulin. That is a critical point for anyone with type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance. Because it means movement gives your body an additional pathway to manage blood sugar that doesn't rely on insulin sensitivity. A short walk after dinner can reduce the post-meal blood sugar spike that would otherwise occur while you're sitting still. It helps your body process the glucose from your meal more efficiently, and it sets a lower, more stable baseline for your blood sugar to start from when you eventually go to sleep, which means the overnight processes we just talked about, the liver release, the hormonal rises, the dawn phenomenon are working from a better starting point, and that can translate directly into better morning blood sugar readings. Now, here's the other important thing about this habit. Consistency matters far more than intensity. You don't need to walk fast. You don't need to walk far. You don't need to do it perfectly. You need to do it regularly, 10 minutes after dinner, most evenings, over a consistent period of time. That is what creates the kind of gradual, meaningful improvement that shows up in your glucose numbers over weeks and months. Simple, free, available to almost everyone, and almost completely overlooked. Now, here's something I want you to understand. Because it matters a lot, you could start the 10-minute evening walk tonight. You could commit to it fully, and still not see the results you're hoping for if other evening habits are quietly working against you at the same time. So, let's talk about the mistakes that cancel out the benefits. The first is remaining seated for hours after dinner. On the nights you don't walk, one evening of movement doesn't undo several evenings of complete stillness. Consistency is the whole point. If a nightly walk isn't possible every single day, even gentle stretching or standing briefly after meals can help maintain the habit. The second is late-night snacking. This is one of the most common and least recognized patterns in people with unstable overnight blood sugar. Eating again 2 or 3 hours after dinner, even something that feels small or harmless, adds a new wave of glucose to your system late at night when your body is least equipped to handle it efficiently. If you're genuinely hungry, a small portion of protein or healthy fat is a much better option than crackers, fruit, cereal, or anything high in fast-digesting carbohydrates. The third is an irregular sleep schedule. Your body's internal clock directly regulates insulin sensitivity, cortisol patterns, and glucose metabolism. When your bedtime varies significantly from night to night, those rhythms get disrupted. And disrupted rhythms mean disrupted blood sugar control, even if your food choices are good. The fourth is excessive screen time before bed. Bright screens, especially phones and tablets, suppress melatonin, the hormone that signals your body it's time to sleep. When melatonin is suppressed, sleep quality drops, and poor sleep has a direct, measurable negative effect on insulin sensitivity the following day. Some research suggests that even a single night of poor sleep can reduce insulin sensitivity by a meaningful amount, comparable in some cases to eating a high carbohydrate diet. Here's the pattern I want you to see in all of this. It's not one big mistake. It's several small habits, each seeming harmless on its own, layering on top of each other night after night, and together, they can completely cancel out the benefits of every positive choice you're making. The good news is that the same logic works in reverse. Several small improvements, stacked consistently, can create results that feel disproportionately powerful. Let's bring everything together. You don't need a perfect evening routine. You don't need to overhaul your lifestyle. And you don't need a miracle solution that promises overnight transformation. What you need is awareness of what's actually happening during those hours between dinner and sleep, and 1 or 2 consistent habits that work with your body instead of against it. A 10-minute walk after dinner, a consistent bedtime, skipping the late night snack, putting the phone down an hour before bed. None of these things are complicated. None of them cost money. None of them require dramatic willpower or sacrifice, but practiced consistently over weeks and months, they support your body's ability to regulate blood sugar more effectively overnight, and the results that come from that consistency: better morning blood sugar, fewer unexplained spikes, more stable energy throughout the day, and greater confidence in managing your diabetes. Those results are very real. Here's the truth about diabetes management that I want to leave you with today. The most powerful changes are often the simplest. Not because simple things are easy to stick to, but because simple things are easy to start. And starting tonight, with just 10 minutes, is where every meaningful improvement begins. In our next video, we're going to look at another common nighttime behavior that millions of people believe is completely harmless. Something that almost everyone does without a second thought. And yet, the evidence suggests it may be quietly affecting blood sugar while sleeping every single night. You won't want to miss it. So make sure you're subscribed to Health Insight MD. Before you go, I want to ask you a quick question. What do you usually do during the first 10 minutes after dinner? Do you go for a walk? Do you sit down and relax? Do you turn on the TV? Or do you check your phone? Leave your answer in the comments below, because sometimes the smallest nightly habits reveal the biggest clues about what's happening with your blood sugar, and your answer might help someone else recognize a pattern they've never been able to explain. If you're finding value in this kind of evidence-based diabetes content, subscribe to Health Insight MD and join us for the next video. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you there.